Alright, you won't believe what just happened. In 2024, the WNBA finally heard that roar. For nearly 30 years, the league lived in the shadow of its big brother, surviving on life support, tax write-offs, and the vague, distant promise of potential. Then came the spark. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and a rookie class that didn't just play basketball. They moved the needle of American culture. Ratings were up 300%. Attendance in some cities doubled overnight. For the first time in history, the WNBA wasn't just a good cause or a niche interest, it was the biggest show in town. But while the cameras were flashing and the world was finally paying attention, something else was happening behind the scenes. A series of choices, a wave of internal friction, and a high-stakes game of chicken that might have just derailed the most important momentum in the history of women's sports. They say the hardest thing about getting to the top is staying there. But in the WNBA, it seems the players and the leadership might have decided to burn the mountain down before they even reached the peak. To understand how this spotlight was seemingly thrown away, you first have to understand just how bright it actually was. The 2024 season was a statistical anomaly that defied every historical trend the league had ever seen. The Caitlin Clark effect wasn't just a marketing buzzword, it was a total market takeover. When the Indiana Fever took the court, attendance shot up by over 100% compared to games where she wasn't playing. A single player doubled the gates for an entire franchise and created a gravitational pull that shifted the entire league's ledger. In fact, the Indiana Fever alone accounted for a staggering 33% of the total WNBA attendance in 2024. One team carried a third of the weight for a 12-team league. On television, the numbers were even more incredible. The 2024 WNBA draft pulled in nearly 2.5 million viewers, a massive increase over the previous year that put it on par with major men's sports drafts. By the time the All-Star game rolled around, over 3 million people were watching. The league had successfully transitioned from a niche product to a mainstream powerhouse. But here is the mystery. If the league was booming, why were the people running it acting like the ship was sinking? The truth is hidden in the accounting books, far away from the highlight reels. While fans saw sold-out arenas, the accountants saw a $40 to $50 million hole. Historically, the WNBA has averaged a $10 million annual loss since its inception back in 1996. But in the year of its greatest success, the deficit actually quintupled. This is the paradox of growth. Every time a team flew a charter flight, a hard-won luxury the players demanded to ensure they weren't stuck in security lines at commercial airports, it added an estimated $25 million in annual expenses to the league's ledger. The spotlight was on, the fans were cheering, but the electricity bill was becoming unaffordable. This is where the first cracks in the relationship began to show. The players looked at the packed stands and saw dollar signs. The owners looked at the expenses and saw red ink. The friction wasn't just about money, it was about the fundamental identity of the league. Was it a charity project for the NBA, or was it a standalone business? Enter Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. As the first commissioner of the WNBA, she was supposed to be the architect of this new era. Instead, she became the lightning rod for player frustration. The tension reached a fever pitch during a now infamous interview where she was asked about the darker tone of the fan bases, specifically the racial and social tensions surrounding the rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Rather than condemning the toxicity, Engelbert leaned into the marketing potential of the conflict. She called it a bird magic moment, suggesting that the league needs rivalry and that fans don't necessarily want everyone being nice to one another. To the players, this felt like a total betrayal. They felt the commissioner was prioritizing engagement metrics and rage-bait marketing over their personal safety and dignity. They didn't want to be characters in a manufactured drama, they wanted to be athletes protected by their own league. But the friction goes deeper than a single interview. In the closed-door world of WNBA leadership, rumors began to circulate that Engelbert's relationship with the athletes had turned toxic. One persistent story suggests that during a private meeting, Engelbert allegedly told the players they should be on their knees thanking her for the media deal she had secured. While the commissioner has vehemently denied saying this, the mere fact that the story gained such traction and was seemingly believed by stars like Napheesa Collier speaks volumes. Collier eventually went on the record calling the WNBA leadership the worst in the world. When the face of your league and its top stars are in an open state of war, the spotlight doesn't illuminate the game, it illuminates the dysfunction. It reveals a culture where the people at the top and the people on the court are speaking two completely different languages. We have to look at the economic reality of the situation because that is where the throwing it away part becomes clear. We have all seen the headlines about WNBA salaries being a joke. We saw the memes about Caitlin Clark making roughly $76,000 as a #1 pick, while NBA bench warmers make millions. On the surface, it looks like an injustice, but when you apply the actual math of professional sports, a different picture emerges. The profit is simply what is left after you pay the bills. In 2024, despite the revenue rising to approximately $200 million, the costs of running the league surged so much that they still fell into that $50 million deficit. The league's media rights value is set to increase from $60 million to an estimated $200 million annually. That is a historic increase, but it is being met by player demands that could bankrupt the league before the new money even hits the bank. In October 2024, the players opted out of their collective bargaining agreement. It was a power move designed to capitalize on the 2024 surge. The league responded with a proposal for 2026 that included a maximum base salary of $1 million and total compensation that could reach over $1 million through revenue sharing. The minimum salary was proposed to rise to $250,000. For a league that loses money every year, this was an incredibly aggressive offer, but the players said no. They are demanding 30% of gross revenue. This is the gross versus net war. The league wants to share a higher percentage of the profits, the money left over after the bills are paid. The players want a cut of every single dollar that comes in the door before a single light bill or charter flight is handled. If the league generates $200 million, a 30% gross share would mean $60 million goes to player salaries. When you add that to the $250 million in operational expenses the league already faces, the annual loss would deepen to over $100 million. The NBA currently owns 60% of the WNBA, and they are the ones keeping the lights on. But NBA owners are starting to lose patience. Some are looking at the expansion fees from teams in Toronto and Golden State, money that isn't being distributed back to the NBA owners, and they are wondering why they are subsidizing a league that is trying to negotiate itself into a graveyard. They see a business that isn't sustainable, and they see a workforce that is demanding a payout based on a future that hasn't arrived yet. While this civil war is happening, the players have started building their own escape hatches, and this is where the story takes a turn toward fragmentation. Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart founded a league called Unrivaled. It's a 3-on-3 league that plays in the WNBA offseason, offering six-figure minimum salaries and, most importantly, equity stakes. The players are becoming their own bosses, but this creates a massive conflict of interest. If the top stars of the WNBA own a competing basketball league, do they actually want the WNBA to succeed? Or are they using the WNBA's hard-earned spotlight to build their personal brands before jumping ship to their own private entities? It's a brilliant move for the individuals, but it might be a death blow for the collective. Then there is Project B. This is a global 5-on-5 league launching in 2026 that is reportedly offering salaries of over $2 million per year. They've already signed WNBA stalwarts like Nneka Ogwumike, Alyssa Thomas, and Jonquel Jones. The WNBA is fighting to offer $1 million, while this mysterious startup is offering double that before playing a single game. There are whispers that Project B is backed by massive global capital, with some pointing toward foreign sovereign wealth funds, though the founders claim their funding is global and diversified. If Project B succeeds, it creates a fragmented talent pool. You'll have some stars in the WNBA, some in Unrivaled, and some in Project B. For a sport that just finally unified its audience in 2024, this is a disaster. It is the LIV Golf moment for women's basketball. And just like in golf, when the stars split up and play in different sandboxes, the fans often stop caring about all of them. One of the biggest obstacles the league faces is a burgeoning PR nightmare regarding the perception of entitlement. Angel Reese, one of the most recognizable faces in the sport, made headlines when she claimed her WNBA salary couldn't cover her $8,000 a month rent in Chicago. To the average viewer, a player complaining about an $80,000 salary while living in a luxury high-rise and earning millions in endorsements from brands like Reebok and Reese's Pieces feels out of touch. When players threaten to strike for 30% of gross revenue in a business that loses $50 million a year, the public doesn't see a labor struggle, they see a disconnect from reality. This narrative is toxic for a league that is still trying to build a loyal, long-term fan base. The warning signs are already appearing. In early 2026, the second season of the Unrivaled League kicked off, and the numbers were devastating. Opening night viewership was down 44% compared to the first season. The sparkle has worn off, the novelty is gone, and most importantly, without Caitlin Clark on the court, the casual fans aren't tuning in. This is the canary in the coal mine. It proves that the spotlight wasn't on the WNBA or the concept of women's basketball as a whole, it was on a few specific stars and the story they told. By fragmenting the league and fighting over a contract that the league's current cash flow cannot support, the players are betting that the fans care about the players more than the league itself. But the unrivaled numbers suggest that when the stars are spread too thin across too many different platforms, the audience just walks away. The gross revenue demand from the players' union represents a fundamental shift in sports labor relations. In traditional profitable leagues like the NBA, player shares are calculated as a percentage of income after major expenses. The players are refusing the current offer from the league because 70% of nothing is still nothing. However, the 30% gross demand forces the league to pay out $60 million in salaries while they are already $50 million in the red, requiring a $110 million annual subsidy just to stay afloat. This isn't just a negotiation, it's a request for the NBA to double its losses every single year. At some point, the financiers stop looking at the potential and start looking at the exit. So where does this leave us? The WNBA finally had the spotlight, and instead of using it to build a sustainable foundation, the players and leadership have turned it into a searchlight, exposing every crack in the system. The players are opting out of contracts, the commissioner is under fire, and rival leagues are luring away talent with promises of equity and massive paychecks. But the most surprising part of this entire story is the role of the person who started it all. Caitlin Clark has remained largely silent on the drama. She hasn't joined Unrivaled. She hasn't signed with Project B. She seems to be the only one who understands that the spotlight only works if everyone is standing on the same stage. For decades, the complaint was that the world didn't care about women's basketball. In 2024, the world finally showed up. They bought the jerseys, they filled the arenas, and they stayed for the fourth quarter. The product was finally sold, but a league is more than just a game, it's a business. And right now, the WNBA is a business at war with itself. The players want the compensation of a mature multi-billion-dollar entity, while the league is still trying to figure out how to pay for its own flights. If the WNBA collapses under the weight of these demands and the fragmentation of its talent, it won't be because the fans didn't care. It will be because the players and leadership decided that a perfect deal today was more important than a viable league tomorrow. They had the world in the palm of their hands, and they might have just let it slip through their fingers. The danger now is that the audience is fickle. Sports fans have more options today than at any point in human history. They can watch the NBA, the NFL, European soccer, or a million different creators on YouTube and TikTok. The WNBA was the it thing for a glorious 12-month stretch. But the it factor is fragile. When you replace highlights with labor disputes and replace star matchups with legal threats, the casual fan moves on. We saw it happen with baseball strikes in the 90s. We saw it happen with hockey lockouts. Those leagues had decades of history to fall back on, and it still took them years to recover. The WNBA doesn't have that cushion. It is a startup that finally went viral, only for the founders and the staff to start suing each other the next morning. The story of the 2024 season should have been the beginning of a dynasty. Instead, it might be remembered as the peak before the fall. As the players move toward a potential strike and the league struggles to find its financial footing, the roar of the stadium is being replaced by the bickering of the boardroom. The players are making a gamble that their individual stars are bigger than the WNBA brand. But the history of sports is littered with rival leagues and breakaway stars who discovered that the platform was just as important as the person standing on it. The spotlight is still there for now, but the battery is running low, and unless someone realizes that you can't divide a pie that hasn't been baked yet, the WNBA might find itself back in the silence where it started, wondering where everyone went. When we look back at this moment 10 years from now, will we see it as the birth of a new era, or the most expensive missed opportunity in sports history? The players are fighting for their worth, and the league is fighting for its life. In that struggle, the fans are the ones being left behind. The momentum that was built by years of sweat and the arrival of a generational talent is being traded for a high-stakes legal battle. The WNBA finally had the world's attention, and the tragic reality is that they might have spent all that social capital before they ever earned a single dollar of profit. The tragedy of the situation is that the product on the court has never been better. The skill, the speed, and the sheer competitive fire are at an all-time high. But in the modern world, being great isn't enough. You have to be sustainable. You have to be unified. Right now, the WNBA is neither. It is a house divided, standing in a spotlight that is slowly starting to flicker. The fans didn't throw it away. The sponsors didn't throw it away. The people inside the building did. and that is a loss that no amount of highlight reels can ever truly fix.